Hi, this is Claire. Before we start the podcast, I would really appreciate it if you could rate and review or subscribe to this podcast on your chosen podcast platform. Thank you. Enjoy the pod. Hi, hello, and welcome to the 12th episode of the Stage Manager Supply Co. podcast. We have no sponsor this episode, but instead are brought to you by Hanging Shoe Racks. Hanging Shoe Racks, great storage for office supplies, costumes, props, water bottles, and your dignity. My name is Claire, I am your host, and thank you for joining me today. As we start every podcast, I would first like to say that Black Lives Matter, and that I am creating this content on the traditional lands of the Kickapoo, Peoria, Potawatomi, Miami, and Sioux tribes. We always start the podcast acknowledging the inequitable landscape and history of the United States, including but never limited to the fact that we are a country built on stolen land and developed on the backs of slaves. Stage Manager Supply Co. is my own attempt to bridge generations of systematic racism and oppression by making stage management arts education much more accessible. Today, I would like to highlight the Broadway Advocacy Coalition and the Cody Renard Richard Scholarship Program. Founded in 2016 by members of the Broadway community as a direct response to the nation's pandemic of racism and police brutality, the Broadway Advocacy Coalition has since grown into a multidisciplinary organization uniting artists with legal experts and community leaders to have a lasting impact on policy issues including criminal justice reform, education equity, and immigration. Through the Broadway Advocacy Coalition, our guest today created the Cody Renard Richard Scholarship Program, which aims to honor, uplift, and support the next generation of Black, Asian, Latinx, Indigenous, and people of color theater makers. If you would like to learn more about the Broadway Advocacy Coalition and the Cody Renard Richard Scholarship Program and donate what you are able, you can find the link to their website in the episode description. 2 disclaimers before I introduce today's guest. Disclaimer number 1. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the host and the guest and do not reflect the official policy or position of any other agency, production, organization, employer, or company. Disclaimer number 2. The host does not presume to be any sort of singular voice for stage management or stage managers. The views and opinions expressed by the host are extremely limited to the scope of her own experiences and are being widened each and every day. So, now that we've grounded our work in the reality of the world around us, let me introduce you to our guest. Our guest today is Cody Renard Richard. Cody is an equity stage manager based out of New York City and a graduate of Webster University, where he was just announced as the recipient of their Young Alumni Award. Cody has worked in a wide variety of theatrical endeavors. On Broadway, he has worked on Freestyle Love Supreme, Hamilton, Dear Evan Hansen, Kinky Boots, Motown, and many more. His Cirque du Soleil credits include Paramour, Woo and Wintuck. In live events and television, Cody has stage managed the Tony Awards, The Wiz Live, Jesus Christ Superstar Live, Hairspray Live, and most recently, the 2020 MTV Music Video Awards. He is an arts educator, which we stan, currently as an adjunct at NYU and previously at Fordham, Yale, Webster, SUNY Purchase, and Ithaca College. He has also spoke on multiple panels and hosted his own Today Tix event about, you guessed it, stage management. Cody is also quite honestly an Instagram influencer at Cody Renard and has been interviewed by CNN for his perspective on racism and accountability in the entertainment industry. To top this all off, Cody was recently announced as one of Variety's Broadway to Watch for 2020. I met Cody at Williamstown when he was working on a production of the Broadway-bound Lempicka. I was able to watch him during a run of tech for the first dress rehearsal, which may have been the most impressive thing I've ever seen, and I had to go again to see the show after because I was too busy just obsessing over Cody. Cody, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh my God, thank you for having me.
In a long while. First and foremost, I just want to say how happy and lucky I am to be talking to you, especially in this time with COVID, and that you, I know, dealt with COVID really early on. So I'm just really happy and grateful that you are here and healthy to whatever extent we know. How are you holding up after that experience?
It's, I've been saying this to everyone. This time during Corona is a roller coaster. There are many ups and many, many downs, a lot of downslides, uphill battles. But right now I'm in a good place, just, practicing self-care and trying to embrace whatever moment I'm in. I'm healthy, I'm finding ways to stay busy and finding ways to be social safely. So yeah, I'm in a good place right now. Also trying not to consume so much media that comes in and which can be a little daunting and a little disheartening. So yeah, I'm just trying to activate this Black boy joy every day. But I'm okay. I'm good.
Good, good. I want to ask you right off the bat about the We See You White American Theater movement that you and hundreds of other BIPOC theater makers signed and published an open letter to the White American Theater Institution on June 8th. How did you get involved with We See You, and what has been the impact of this letter to this moment thus far?
Yeah, I kind of got involved. It basically started with 10 people reaching out to 10 people, 10 people reaching out to 10 people, and like someone brought me on, and we keep most of it confidential. So what I can say is that I was brought on by someone, and where it started off as like a very small group of people. I think when we published the letter, there was 300 people who signed it, just to get it out there and to make the statement. Since then, within 24 hours, I think it was signed by 50,000 people, and now I think the number is closer to 300,000. It's probably more, but so many people have showed support. So many people have has pledged to be allies and to hold people accountable and try to enact some of the things that we're talking about. So since the letter's been published, there's been a lot of talk and a lot of things surrounding it. New York Times spoke about it. Actually, I was on WNBC with a friend of mine, Asmaret Gibber-Michael, who's an actor, and they kind of wanted to speak about the letter as well. So it's been a lot of buzz around it in the press, I guess. And also, I think that a lot of producers have also taken wind of it, and people have been made aware of things that they necessarily weren't thinking about before.
Yeah, I know that definitely woke me up in that sense. What I want to ask also about that, after the letter, there was I believe it's 32-page document of demands that were listed. And if you haven't read the demands, I will link them in the episode description. They are so well thought out, so planned. I want to ask what specifically you're most passionate about in those list of demands as a stage manager, as someone who, is in that middle management position. What demands do you think are helpful for the stage management profession?
Well, yeah, that list is so comprehensive, and it is, it's 32 pages, and it takes a lot to get through. But it's important to read just to hear perspective of what we need. We kind of came together to create that list by we all broke off into subcommittees, and each committee was kind of in charge of a certain part. So there were a couple of Zoom meetings and a lot of emails, and through the 300 people who were kind of divided up, came up with the full list. And of course, there was someone who's like overseeing and making sure that everything was on track and whatnot. But like in a dream world, everything. But that's not necessarily where we are right now, but we are still pushing for change and pushing to see what we can make happen. The things that I'm most excited about is like actually putting an anti-racism practice into effect by the union, hopefully, by employers. I was just on a roundtable earlier today, and someone brought up the fact that, the first day of rehearsal, we skim over sexual harassment policies, we do the meet and greet, we do the equity rules, but we need to spend time talking about an anti-racism policy. Like there should be dedicated time and a person coming in either from the union or from our employer spending time to talk about this. And I think that's one of the easiest things that we can put into practice. And I think it's a very important thing. So I'm really pushing and hoping that we can get more support from our union and certain employers to make that happen. And also just the hiring of the necessary people that we need in order to make everyone feel comfortable, whether it's an actor or a stage manager or a certain crew member, just getting more people of color into roles that will serve the show. So I'm also very passionate about that, and hopefully, through that we can solve a lot of the things that we mentioned in the list of demands.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll say it again, I will link those demands. I highly, highly recommend that anyone listening reads them and thinks about them and takes them in. I jumped ahead of where I usually start the podcast, which is asking about you and where did you start? Where do you come from, Cody? What was your journey to arts and theater and stage management?
I come from a little town called Hockley, Texas, right outside of Houston, Texas. I normally just say Houston because it's easier. No one knows where Hockley
No,
is.
it's okay.
So I grew up in Hockley, Texas. I went to high school at Waller High School. I grew up riding horses and competing in the rodeo. So my upbringing was very country, very, very outdoors every day, dealing with animals. When I was much younger, we had chickens and cows and goats.
Oh, so jealous.
I miss it. I'm not gonna lie. So that's kind of where my upbringing started. I didn't really get into theater until, or drama as we called it when we were, in high school. I started in junior high as something that they made me do. Like they were like, you need to be in this you have a lot of energy, child. So, it was a way for me to stay out of trouble and release energy, basically. And I kind of fell in love with it. I was a class clown when I was younger. So it was fun to get that attention that I was seeking in the classroom for whatever reason, years of therapy teaching. But you know what I mean? So I just I got thrown into the theater as a place that for me to stay out of trouble, basically. And then it wasn't until high school to where I started stage managing in high school. My high school theater director saw something in me, and she was like, you need to be our stage manager. We want you, to handle this. And I was like, oh, I get to be in charge? Great. So so I was like her right-hand person. I was like her assistant director. I was her stage manager. I found all the props. I helped them make costumes. Like I did all the things, and I loved getting to do everything, being that person that people came to, like, where is this? What do I need here? How can I do this? I love being Mr. Fix-It. So that was exciting. And my high school theater teachers, Carrie and Brian Wood, shout out to them. They basically introduced me to the idea of pursuing it past high school. So they actually drove me to the International Thespian Festival in Lincoln, Nebraska to audition for colleges. And I did. I auditioned interviewed for colleges. I interviewed for, however many schools, there are like 50 to 75 schools. And then through that, I found Webster. And when I met with Peter Sargent, who just recently passed away last year, but who was at the time the head of the program, I was like, oh, I have to go to this school. There was something about the way he spoke about the program. There's something about the way he carried himself. And I was like, oh, this is the place. This is like, it just felt like that was like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? And
clicked.
And I got accepted to a lot of schools, thank God. But like Webster, when they accepted me, I was like, that's where I'm going. So, we went to St. Louis and visited the campus, and I was like, yep, I'll be going here. And then that's how it happens. And then the rest is,
The rest is history until your award that I saw today. Congratulations.
10 years later.
Oh, amazing. I want to ask about your time at Webster and kind of after, your early career phases. You, when you graduated, moved right to New York City. And when you moved to New York, did you have mentors from Webster? Who were your early career mentors that kind of gave you your first start in New York?
I that's tricky. Like I in school, Peter Sargent was definitely my mentor, and even like after school, I would reach out to him for questions and like stuff like that, and he would get back to me when he was busy. He was also the dean of the conservatory, so he was a very busy man. So he would get back to me whenever he could. So he was sort of my mentor who guided me through like certain things. But as far as New York, navigating New York, I didn't necessarily have a mentor. I was connected with Julia Jones, who is a stage manager on Broadway. She's amazing. And she also went to Webster. So I was kind of connected to her through Peter. I think that's how that happened. And she, you know, through a series of interviews, I got Ghost the Musical as a PA. And then from there, she hired me as the assistant stage manager on Motown. So she kind of, um, guided me a little bit early on. But for the most part, it's kind of been like me trying to figure it out because I didn't really know many people in New York. And so everything that like I did kind of led to the next thing. And like every opportunity was an opportunity for me to meet new people and network and figure out how to continue this career. So unfortunately, I didn't really have many mentors to guide me, but I had myself and I had my friends and I had people who helped. And I think that kind of stands to who I am and my character of like, of how I kind of move, I guess. But yeah, I mean, there are a lot of people who've helped me along the way, no doubt. But as far as like someone who I can always go to, I never really had that. But
That's such a good perspective though, because a lot of people I've talked to in the past can point to like one or two or three definite people, but what I think what you're saying about just expanding the network continually and making connections from each show to each show is really important for maybe even kids who are in college right now who maybe don't have the strongest network
yeah,
or
and also I'll say that like there were definitely people in my early 20s that I reached out to and I was like, you're gonna be my mentor. Like without saying it, but in my mind I was like, I kept asking for questions. And at a certain point it started to feel like, oh, they're not into this. You know what I mean? So then that's when I was like, okay, I have to figure it out. You know what I mean? And I have to know that everything is, I don't want to say a stepping stone to something else, but everything leads to something else. Everything happens for a reason. So I took that as a place to be more activated in my journey and my career, as opposed to a place of being discouraged that I didn't have anyone who would help guide me. You know what I mean? So that's kind
yeah.
of what kind of propelled me or pushed me to go, I guess.
Yeah, that's really beautiful self-discernment and knowing where you want to be and what steps you need to take to get there. You mentioned kind of how you first made a Broadway connection with Julia Jones. What what has been? I mean, I listed your credits in the introduction, but you've been working on Broadway for a very long time now. What was the journey for you of going from these PA positions to, I mean, most recently you PSM'd Freestyle of Supreme. What were challenges along the way, and what were really big successful moments?
Um, the, the most challenges that I faced were basic. I mean, I have a very young face,
I
and
can relate.
you know, and I can grow out this hair, but I still to certain people look however old they want to place me, right? So I think one of the biggest challenges that I continually face is that when I meet people, they're like, "Oh, he's young." You know what I mean? There's always, "Oh, you're young. Oh, you'll get there. You know what I mean?" So I always had to, not I shouldn't say always, but there were a lot of times where I had to um, go above and beyond to prove myself to get certain people's respect or to be considered for certain jobs. And I also think with me being black, one of the few black stage managers, I shouldn't say one of the few, there are a lot of black stage, we just don't know about them. that goes into play with it too. But I think being a stage manager and being young, there's always that moment of like you're working with someone who is double your age and they're like, child, I've been doing this forever. What you got? You know what I mean? So you have to assert yourself in a certain way. So learning how to bring myself to the room and assert myself without feeling like I'm trying to be someone else has been a big challenge throughout my entire career. When I was trying to make the leap from PAing to assisting, I had to be intentional about what I wanted and how I presented myself and how I spoke to people. And when I was wanting to make the leap from assisting to PSMing, I had to be intentional about what I said and what jobs I took and which rooms I were in and who I was, So it's all about like, for me, setting my intentions. So like that also goes along with like a big like hump I had to jump over, just figuring out what I wanted and like making sure that was what I was working towards. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so I could just let you go on about that for hours because I'm so vibing with it. Something I'm very, very interested about your career specifically, and it is not Broadway, we're pulling a 180, is your work with Cirque. Paramour was one of maybe the first 10 shows I saw on Broadway. And it was something else. What was the process of putting a Cirque show up on Broadway? I think it was their first Broadway endeavor. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What was that like? What was like working with equity performers and AGVA performers? Safety wise, give me the lowdown on all of it.
Yo, Cirque on Broadway, and on paper doesn't work. You know what I mean? Like it is crazy what Cirque du Soleil puts up. It's amazing. It's mind blowing. But the amount of training and work and effort and time that has to go into creating a Cirque show is insane. So the model of Cirque du Soleil on Broadway, on paper doesn't work. So we had to figure out how to make it work. And that's why most of the cast were on AGVA contracts, and then the other part of the cast were on equity contracts, because we had to really kind of make up different rules in order to make this show work. Paramour, one of the reasons why I got Paramour, because I had previously worked for Cirque twice, and also I had Broadway experience. And The Wiz Live on NBC was a co-production between Cirque du Soleil and NBC, which a lot of people don't know about. So like, I know that the reason why I got the show, because I had experience from both worlds, and like merging the two together, I think that was an exciting thing for the general managers and whatnot. So I was very happy to be able to do that show. But she was hard. She was very hard, and we learned a lot of lessons, and it was crazy to put up. We rehearsed the show at Grumman Studios, which is in Long Island, which ain't as close as you think it is. So we would commute out.
That's so
Island
true.
Every day. We would rehearse the normal amount of hours, the normally equity Broadway rehearsal hours out in Long Island, and we would commute home. Sometimes, we got to be there at 9 o'clock in the morning. So you leave your house sometimes at 7:30, and you don't get back home until like 8:30, 9 o'clock. So it is a long day. They were all long days. We rehearsed for 5 weeks, I believe, in the warehouse, maybe longer, but I think it was 5 weeks. Then we teched for 5 weeks, and then we previewed for, I feel like 3 years. But it was a lot. And like, circus performers aren't used to the demanding schedule that's on Broadway. We 8 shows a week, and like, and Paramour was, not a 90-minute show like some of the shows in Vegas are. It was a full production. She was a long show, and
I can confirm.
you know what I mean? So like, it was just getting them used to how Broadway works, and getting the Broadway people used to how, Cirque work. I mean, like, I can go on and on about like the logistics of it, because there was so much that happened. Like, we started the show, we didn't have swings. We fought to get swings added, because normally in a Cirque show, there are internal covers on stage. You know what I mean? So if someone goes out, someone just pivots to their position. And on Broadway, typically that's not how that works. You know what I mean? So we had to figure out how to mend the two together. Also with Cirque, if someone is injured, we modify their track so they can only do half of their track. On Broadway, if you're injured, you're out of the show. You know what I mean? So it is a very different, it was two different worlds that had to meet. And luckily we had two stage managers who had only really worked for Cirque, primarily, I should say. And then we had the other two, Tim and I, who were Broadway, and I had a little bit of both. So we were all able to kind of like throw things together and like figure it out. So that was really cool. My favorite part was getting to work with those stage managers because they're amazing. So we got to collaborate and do something cool. The last thing I'll say, because I don't want to talk about Cirque all day.
Okay,
is that, you know, we opened the show and we went back into tech. Like that show was already insane to put up and to get going. We opened the show and then we went back into tech for 2 or 3 weeks. And I think we were still doing the show at night for like a week of that. And then I think we shut down. I can't remember, but I think we were still doing the show while we were reteching the show during the day. So that was crazy. And learning, I remember one day, Tim was calling the show. He was the first assistant on the show, and he was calling the show, and I was learning to call the show next. And we changed we put a whole new act into the show, and we changed a lot of sequences. And with Cirque, safety is first, and like you have to be uber dialed in. If not, like a lot could happen, you know? So just like things like the timing of small cues within a scene that barely changed was really messing with my mind. And I was getting ready to call the show one day and looked at him, I was like, I can't do this today. And he was like, yeah, you can. Stop being crazy. You know what I mean? Like there's those nerves, but there was something in my head that I couldn't get out. And I was like, no, if I call this show today, it's not going to go well. And in hindsight, I probably could have done it, but I just freaked myself out because I was like, I think I was just overwhelmed and stressed. And like, luckily, you know, we had a great team, and like, he was like, all right, I'll do it. And then I called it the next day and it was fine. But just like you know, just thinking of like opening a trap too soon, or like, you know, calling a fly, whatever. I was just like, I was in my head about it because we just rushed. We didn't rush, but we just retech this thing while we were doing the other show, and I had other things. It was just like, it was a lot of things piling up on top of each other. So Cirque was a lot. I learned a lot. I grew a lot. It was a crazy experience. I'm proud of what we accomplished, but it was crazy. You know. And the other thing I'll say, I said I was only going to say that. But
no, please talk more. I love
this. Cirque du Soleil created a theatrical division, and the hope was to produce like shows like The Wiz and shows, you know, other shows with Cirque elements. And I was really excited about that because it wasn't necessarily like a Cirque du Soleil show, which I think is insane to do on Broadway. It can happen because we did it, but I think like, you know, the excitement of doing like something like The Wiz on Broadway with like acrobats and like Cirque elements was also really cool. Or like I forget what the other titles they were throwing around, but like, so I was really excited about that. I don't know if it's ever going to happen, but you know, that'd be cool.
I could literally talk to you for like 6 hours about Paramour, so we will move on.
We'll circle back offline.
Yeah, exactly. So cool. I think though that safety issue rings so true. I've said since college, I'm like, I don't want to work for Cirque. I don't think safety wise, I would be too stressed all the time for anything to
you'll
go
be
wrong.
Fine. Because the good thing about Cirque is that the performers are the best of the best. A lot of them have came out of the wound training for this, and a lot of them, you know, train later on. But they are some of them are Olympic athletes. Some of them are medalists. Like they are the best of the best is what they do. So they got your back as much as you have theirs, and because they've been doing it for so long, they trust you. You know what I mean? So I think that helps eases whatever you have. So like building that trust with them is amazing because they're the best of the best. So that helps going into a situation kind of feeling overwhelmed or like, oh my God, I have so much to, you know what I mean?
Yeah, completely. That's so cool. Okay, we're moving on. To round out your triple threat status of, the Broadway and the Cirque du Soleil, you, as you mentioned with The Wiz, have worked as a television stage manager. And this is something that I have no experience in. So I would love to hear how you got your foot in the door working these live events. I mean, it is a live event. But it also is being filmed. So what are the challenges and what are the skill sets you utilize when you're doing a live event versus, a show on Broadway or a show with Cirque?
5 years ago, I also didn't know what a television stage manager did. The Wiz happened in 2015, and that was my first venture into, excuse me, the world of television. Um, and I say this all the time, but stage management at its core is the same. You know, the terminology changes, the job description changes a little bit, the people change, but at its core, we're still facilitating, we're still keeping a schedule, we're still upkeeping the production, we're still, collaborating with the director, we're still making sure the show happens. So at its core, stage management is the same. And I think after The Wiz, or halfway through The Wiz, when that clicked for me, I was like, oh, I got this. And I think that gave me, a sense of like, I don't know, confidence. This is the word I'm looking for. It gave me a sense of confidence to know that I was like, oh, I can do this, because it was a little scary. I knew a lot of the cast, which was great, but I've never done TV. I didn't know the other TV stage managers. There were two other theatrical stage managers on the show, which were amazing, so that helps. But yeah, just getting to know like the formula of how it works in television was a a learning curve.
Yeah, definitely. That's so true. Of the core elements of our job are the same no matter where we go. It's just how we flex our muscles
And
differently.
I think the more we think about it that way, the more we can be flexible in doing whatever. Like when you're approached and like it's also as simple as people being like, oh, I only do plays, or like they look at you like you're a musical stage manager. It's like, no, sure, that has been my background, but like some people can take the challenge, and some people can dib dab into whatever realm. And that's what I love about my career, is that I've been able to kind of stick my toe into everything. I haven't done a movie yet, but I'm putting that out there that maybe that'll happen one day. You know what I mean?
Manifest, manifest.
So yeah, it's just like remembering that like what you do, and like it really correlates. It can go into whatever medium, as long as you show up and with the knowledge that you have. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So let's talk about how your skills correlated into assistant stage directing Porgy and Bess at the Met. I would love to hear about that. I think about that production once a day, tops. I mean, 7 times a day, tops.
Yeah.
How did you get connected with the Met, and what does the assistant stage director do? Is that more an artistic process that you find than stage management, being part of the directing team?
So I got connected with the Met. Dave Bova, who also passed away, I PSM Candide at Carnegie Hall, and Dave Bova was our hair. He was our hair designer. A year later, I got an email from a woman named Paula Swazi, who is the resident stage director at the Met. Dave gave her my name. He was like, I just worked with this guy who's a stage manager, but I think you would love him. So just meet with him. So she brought me and she's like, hey, I just want to meet with you. Dave speaks highly of you. I just want to like kind of see if we can find something for you here. And I was like, girl, I don't do opera. I've always said to people, I was like, don't block your best thing. Don't say what you do, don't do. But like, I have never had an interest in opera ever. Like, I don't, you know what I mean? I don't read music. I can follow along. Like, I know I'm musical. So like, it's
Yeah.
easy for me to find where we are. And I know like the terminology of it, but I couldn't tell you what note is what. And I'm, mm-mm. So, we went in for this meeting and we talked, and she kind of explained what a stage director does at the Met. And a lot of it is very similar to what a PSM does on Broadway, or even just a stage manager on Broadway. Um, uh, at the Met, the stage managers aren't in the room all the time. They come in for run-throughs, they come in for certain moments to kind of see how the flow works and stuff like that. But the stage directors kind of run the rehearsal. They are the assistant directors and like a resident director and a PSM all mixed in one in the rehearsal process, sort of. So I was like, oh, like the stage directors take blocking and they take down notes about direction and like all of these things that most PSMs do, and then they put people into the show after. So it's very much like what we do on Broadway when we're putting new people in. So a lot of those moments felt like, it's like, oh, that's home. I can do that. You know what I mean? I can do that in my sleep. But it was a little bit more artistic because you had the title of director A, and then B, when you're putting people back into the show, you are maintaining the vision. When there's not a resident director on Broadway, you're kind of doing the same thing. So it's very similar to that. And also on the flip side of that, most stage directors who've been doing this or assistant stage directors or whatever they are in their career, they remount these operas all over the world. If this is something that I continue, like I can remount Porgy at some point, or one of the other stage directors could like remount this production of Porgy and Bess because we have all the information in the books in the backlog. I left the production early, so I probably wouldn't be remounting it. The other two maybe, but that's kind of like the perk of being an assistant stage director, is that you remount this production of the show all over the world. Most operas, they do it once and then it's remounted everywhere. A lot of operas aren't, you know what I mean? So I think, so that's the exciting part of doing it. And also, so there was a lot of similarities to what I knew. And Paula and I hit it off, and she was like, okay, I got to find something for you to do here. And I was like, okay. And then Porgy and Bess came up, and she actually talked to me about a different show, but it didn't work in my schedule. Okay. And Porgy and Bess was the only show in the season that barely fit into my schedule, because last fall was one of the busiest times I've ever had in my career. I went from, I can't even remember, I think I did Porgy and Bess, into the VMAs, into Freestyle Love Supreme, into Evita. They all overlapped. Yeah, it was insane. And very, very, very grateful for the work. But, they were all things that like, Freestyle was something that I've been a part of, but they were just trying to finalize dates. And when they finally did, I had to go back to the Met, and I pulled out of the show because I was like, I can't back out of this thing, even though the dates came later. It's something that I have been attached to, and it was my first PSM on Broadway, and it was a team that I needed to stay loyal to because they're family, and anyway, but through a series of emails, and also. I turned down the Met, Freestyle happened, and then I got a call for the VMA. So it was like, so when the Met came back, I was like, we really want to figure out how to make this work. I was like, I just accepted this other thing.
Oh.
But by the grace of God, and just by people being very, very nice and wanting to work with me, we made it work, and I'm glad that I was able to experience Porgy and Bess. It was the first time that production has been done at the Met in almost 30 years. That's insane. So it was monumental, and to I remember the first day I heard the chorus sing in rehearsal, I had to step out of the room because I started crying.
I just got chills.
It was so beautiful to see, 100, I think the chorus was like 90 or 100 people, to see that many Black and brown faces singing that music at the Met was something that I'll never forget. It gave me chills. I stepped out and I was like, all right, pull yourself together. But it was a beautiful moment. I wrote it in my journal, like I still have the date it happened, because it was such a moment that I'll never forget.
I have chills just like hearing that memory secondhand. So, so beautiful.
That was cool.
I mean, you have all these amazing things, Cody. You're a really big deal. This is what I know to be true about you. And that's not flattery, it's just a fact. But something I also admire about you is that you really great at branding yourself in social media and are, out there in the digital world as a stage manager, as an advocate for social justice, as a human being. What tips do you have for maybe like a young stage manager, someone who's starting their career, about how to brand yourself going into, job markets that right now aren't the best?
Interesting. To be completely honest, I never thought about branding myself until someone was like, "You have a social media presence." And I was like, "Oh, I guess I do." And that, that happened on accident, I guess. Like, I worked with Ariana Grande, and her people started following me, and then Hamilton, and like, shows that were, I guess, I don't know.
They have followings. They have
Yeah, and
people who are attached to them.
and also like I love social media, so I'm always posting and I engage with people who come and see the show, and you know what I mean. So I think that helped to like build whatever my platform is. But I mean, what I would say to people about trying to brand themselves is like, you know, I will say like, social media is only an extension of you. You don't have to share all of you on your social media. So you have to pick like what you want to, like what part of yourself you want to share with the world. You know what I mean? If you want to share all of you with the world, go for it. But know that like you could go from, one person seeing your story to thousands of people seeing it just because someone sent it to someone. So you have to figure out what you want to share with the world. I'm a very positive person. It doesn't take much for me to find joy in things. So I try to always be a light. I try to always spread joy and share joy. And there's some days when I just can't, so I don't. But that's the way I operate. So I think that like I would think that my social media reflects that about me. I try to share my journey of working as well, because I think it's important for young Black kids to know that they can do whatever the hell they want. Especially because I come from a very, very low income family in the middle of nowhere, Texas, to being where I am today. And I'm not going to say that I made it, because I don't think anyone ever makes it, but I think that like my journey can inspire someone. So I like to share as much of that as I can. And if some people don't want to see it, they ain't got to see it. But I think that it's important, if one person sees it's like, oh, I needed to see that today, then I that makes me so happy. So I think what I would say to people is share an extension of them that they feel like can empower people or uplift people. And if that's not who you are, then don't do that. Figure out what you are and who you are, and share that. If you're trying to brand yourself, if you're trying to, put yourself out there that way. You don't have to have social media to be a successful stage manager or successful theater artist. I just really enjoy social media, so I enjoy sharing a part of my life with whoever wants to watch.
Yeah, and I think what you said at the very beginning of the podcast of kind of choosing what media you consume has been, so
Totally,
important for
totally.
me as a stage manager, especially, you get imposter syndrome, you see, oh, that person got that job, that
And
job.
also, you have to,
Yeah,
social media, sometimes you feel like you have to keep up with people. The minute I
definitely.
let go of that, I was much happier. There are a couple of stage managers who came up with me, and there were times I was like, "How did he get that? How did she get that? Why ain't I doing that?" And I was like, "Duh." You know what I mean? I had to stop, because I'm like, "Who cares?" And I didn't live in that world for a very long time, because living in that frequency, I feel like you're just not able to rise to what you need to do. So like, not living in, you can't stay in that world, so you can't be on social media and be like, oh man, he's doing that, I gotta work harder. Unless it's something that is positive for you, I think you have to limit what you see and what you do, because you don't want to have that imposter syndrome or feel like you're doing it for show, because that's not fun either, because then you feel like you're living two lives, and no one really wants to do that. I mean, I
I'd
don't know,
like to
maybe people
put
do.
that whole speech on a pillow or like a permanent like cross stitch in my like right here so I can look at it every day.
Oh no.
Um, So you've kind of now transitioned. You said earlier about when I made the decision to start being an ASM and PSMing. Now that you're kind of at the PSM level of your career, or at a place where you can pick your teams, hopefully, or hire assistants. How do you go about hiring, and how do you go about creating an equitable team?
Well, first of all, I just want to say that like I have PSM'd a show on Broadway, and I have PSM'd regionally and off Broadway, but I still have to fight to get the PSM jobs. You know what I mean? Like I don't want it to feel like, you know, people are just calling me out of the bloom, like, Cody, you gonna PSM this show? No, I still have to prove that I am like able to PSM a Broadway show, even though I've been doing this for a while, and you know, I feel like I have a resume to back up my experience. People still look at me as if I'm young, so like I don't want to, you know what I mean? I just think that that's something that needs to be said,
Yeah.
because people from the outside looking, always, you know, can whatever, you know what I mean? So, and I
Yeah.
think that's like anyone in their career. Like I still get offers to assist, and I know a lot of PSMs that still do, and a lot of PSMs that still assist. But you know, I'm still working towards, you know, my next show on Broadway, hopefully as a PSM, or like whatever it's going to be. So I just think that's really important to say. For me, building a team, it's important to build a team that services the show, you know, and I think that a team that services the show is a team of a lot of different people, whether it's, you know, a female, someone who's non-binary, someone who's Black, someone who's Latinx, someone who's Asian, whatever, you know what I mean? I really think it's, or white, you know what I mean? I really think it's important to diversify your team. And by diversifying your team, that means looking outside the box and not just, you know, I got to hire another Black person, or I got to hire, you know what I mean? It's like, you know, diversifying your team for what serves the show. I personally try to make it my mission to meet new people. It's harder right now because I'm still new to PSMing, so a lot of general managers, a lot of directors urge me to hire people. So I don't necessarily, not in all situations, but sometimes I don't necessarily have um, the ability to hire whoever I want. Maybe I can get like one or two people, but I have
Sure.
to, you know what I mean? So like there are those moments where you have to play the game. But yeah, no, I think it's important for people to start looking outside of their norm, and because people are out there, and there are people who are hungry and who are amazing and who are capable to do the work. You know what I mean? So I think so for me, it's very important to try to bring on more people. Also, it's I have to trust you in order to work with you. I have to be able to enjoy you as a person. Anybody can do the job. I'm saying anybody can learn how to stage manage.
Yeah.
I've seen it. I've seen so many people come through the doors who don't have any, not I should say any experience, but don't have the backgrounds that certain people have. Anybody can learn how to stage manage, and that is why people hire who they hire. So I want you to have the experience, but also need to be able to vibe with you. Like I am huge on energies in my relationships and my friendships and people who I hire. So like if we sit down for an interview and it's like, oh, it's hard to talk to this person, I'm probably gonna go with the person, oh, the next person who's, you know what I mean? So like I think it's important
Yeah.
for, like I said earlier, bringing yourself to the room and bringing yourself to whatever you do, because that only, you know, you know what I mean? I think that just
Yeah.
goes a long way.
Yeah, and I think something that I've picked up in my very short time doing this is like, even if you don't know all the like, this is how you format a run sheet, just being yourself, being positive, and asking for help when you need it, it goes so much farther than trying to put on a facade that isn't who you
Right.
are.
You don't have to have every trick in your toolbox. Like I said, I can't read music, and I did an opera at the Met. You know what I mean? And I was very transparent about it. I was, you know, you tell them you're transparent about what you can do, because the minute you get into the embellishing, which I have done, I'll tell you that story at the end of the thing, because
Okay,
I'm trying
great.
to figure out what crazy story I can tell, but I'll tell you that one. But you know what I mean? So I think that that you have to be honest with your skill set. And one thing that I've been saying in these workshops that I've been leading is that you need to figure out what you bring to the table and constantly serve that, because that is what sets you apart from someone else. You know what I mean? Like the thing that you're really great at, nobody else can do it the way you do it. So lead with that, always bring that, and that's what makes you stand out. You know, a lot of people try to focus on their weaknesses. Great, you know, we should always want to get better, but like knowing what you do very well is such a strength that no one else can do. And I think that's what pushes you above the next person. So if you bring that to an interview with me, I'm like, oh, you know who you are. This is what you're really great at. And I need that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that goes much further than, you know, coming in there and trying to bullshit you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's self level discernment. You got to figure out between you and God first, and then it'll radiate out.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we are at the crazy production story section of the pod, Cody. So this is your time to shine. If you would like to share any story from any production, past, present, or future, please share it with me now.
I was going to tell you about the time at Kinky Boots where I had to go on stage dressed as a factory worker, because
Wow.
I always forget about that. And I was like, oh, that'd be fun. But I think because of the way this has been going, there were two stories that came to mind that involves an interview, and I'm not sure which one I'm going to pick. So I'm going to say both, and you can pick which one you want to use.
Oh, yeah, okay, great.
So way back in the day, 2011 or 12 or something. It was right after I got finished doing Windtuck at Madison Square Garden. I was interviewing for a bunch of Cirque du Soleil shows, and one particular show, I'm telling you this. One show, which is the water show in Vegas. They reached out to me for an interview. So I was like, sure, you know, I can go to Vegas and do this thing, because I was like, Cirque is so cool. So I sent in all my stuff. I had 2 really great interviews. And then I got a follow-up call, and they're like, oh, we forgot to ask you this, but it shouldn't be a problem. We just want to make sure that you can swim. Because, you know, you don't have to get into the water as a stage manager, but if you get pushed into the water, you got to save yourself, right? Or if you're like, whatever, you know what I mean? Like, whatever, if you have to rescue dive, I don't know. And I was like, yeah, of course I can swim. I cannot swim.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, you know, I was 23? And I was like, I need this job. I need this money. Rent is very due. So I said, yeah, I can swim. And I called up my friends. And I had taken swimming lessons before. I've taken swimming lessons multiple times, and I've never been able to swim. I think I know that it's a psychosomatic thing, and I'm traumatized from things that we won't get into right now. But
That's fair.
But I can't swim. So we, you know, went to this hotel pool, and my friend who's a rescue diver was like, I can teach you to swim. You're not going to lose this job. You know what I mean? For 2 weeks, she tried to teach me to swim, and it did not work. So I had to call them and say, listen, I'm so sorry. My swimming abilities, I don't think that they're up to par to what you would need for this show. And I had to like take myself out of it. And they were like, you can't swim, can you? And I was like, I can't.
Oh my God.
Like, oh, it was terrible. So yeah, that's one of a crazy experience that I brought upon myself. So that's when I say, you know, don't embellish. Back that shit up. And also, yes, I went on stage dressed in Kinky Boots as a factory worker.
You want to just tell me about that, because you've teased it now? And
I mean, that's really all it is. Like, I am not an actor. I don't claim to be an actor. I don't want to be an actor. Acting is not my forte. But in Kinky Boots, like, you have to have a certain amount of people to move the furniture around, period. And there were, you know, Thomas Rechtenwald, who's the stage manager of the show, and Ken McGee, who's another stage manager of the show. And also Derek DiGregorio, he also went on. And every time it happened, I was never the one to go on. I was like, oh, thank God. And then one day, these was like, well, Cody, we need you to do this. I was like, no. So I put on these overalls. I went on to like move the sewing machine around and to like, you know, move the things. And of course, all of the cast had to find a way to get to me to like say something and like turn me
their
around
interaction.
to the audience. And I was like, get me all. It was so nerve-wracking. It was, I think I sweated more in that 5 to 10 minutes I was on stage than I probably did during any workout I've ever done. Like I was so, oh my God, it was terrible. But you know, it was fine. I was kind of upstaged. I was trying to keep my back to the audience, but
Yeah.
they were messing with me.
If anyone has the bootleg of Cody's performance, please send it to me. I would love to see it. Well, Cody, thank you so much for sharing all of your stories with me. I know I asked maybe about parts of your career that aren't always highlighted when, you know, people talk to you about stage management, but I hope it just shows that you're more than just the Broadway and you have a wide variety of experiences. So thank you for chatting with me today.
Thanks for having me. It was lovely to chat with you.
Anytime. Okay, end of podcast.
With that, we have come to the end of episode 12 of the Stage Manager Supply Co. podcast. Once again brought to you by Hanging Shoe Racks. Hanging Shoe Racks. Please respect the vertically challenged and put the most important office supplies where I can reach them. Thank you. A huge thanks to Cody for sharing his experiences with me, and a huge thanks to you for listening. I am still on my quest to become the Howard Stern of arts education, and like the little engine that could, I keep telling myself, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. Again, if you would like to signal boost or support the Broadway Advocacy Coalition and the Cody Renard Richard Scholarship Program, their websites will be linked in the episode description. If you enjoyed the podcast, please feel free to rate, review, and subscribe to us on your chosen podcast platform. Thanks again for listening, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye!